technology is one of those things that is so fast growing that is almost it is impossible for any one group of people or one person or any group of people to slow down or contain.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. I have Lily on the line, and I'm excited to have this conversation with her because for those of you listening, Lily Yeoh is a leader at C1 Risk as the founder and CEO. And C1 Risk is a company that's reshaping how organizations are thinking about risk management and compliance. They are providing a powerful platform that helps companies unify their governance, risk, and compliance processes into a single streamlined solution. Lily has been at the forefront of building strategies that not only keep businesses compliant, but also turn risk management into a growth enabler for those companies. So, Lily, thank you so much for joining today. Where are you calling in from?
Thank you for having me, Darren. I'm calling in from San Francisco, California.
Oh, well, it's very early there then, for sure. Well, I appreciate you coming on. What I want to just start with is let's talk about you and your role. So you're obviously the founder, you have a vision at C1 Risk. So tell me how your role ties into the bigger vision of what you're trying to do for the company.
Yeah, my role as the founder and CEO gives me a lot of creativity and autonomy to create an enterprise software based on my background of experiences in what enterprise software is. Really good for companies to scale and automate, and it allows me to take this discipline of governance, risk, and compliance in a heavily regulated compliance world and organizations that are looking to manage many different audits, one or multiple audits at any given point in time of the year, to help them do it more productively. It's almost like think of it the TurboTax for doing your taxes, right? So at some point in time, you don't want to just fill out that 1040 e-form anymore manually. You need to have the guidance, the new rules, and all that good stuff to automate this whole process.
Okay, and that's a really good segue because when it talks about C1 Risk on your site, it mentions a lot of things about helping companies getting risk right. So can you unpack what that really means to potential clients?
Yeah, risk is more than it's a really big word. And a lot of people when they start doing a risk program, it's because they have to. And they have to start writing things down because they're regulated or during the compliance process, the auditor is saying, "Hey, I need to see your risk log, what's in it, how are you evaluating it, and how are you prioritizing your effort to address these risks?" And typically, when people go into it with that type of ask from the auditor and during an audit process, they're not really relaxed enough to really think about true risk to their business. And when you do risk management appropriately, you're not really just like doing it for that moment in time for the audit. You're really thinking about your business in terms of how you want to grow, where you are right now, and what are the risks that you need to really worry about that keeps you up at night that can improve or sustain your business, whatever it takes to reach your business goal. An example of it is something risk is also about something that you're foresighting, right? It's about the future. Otherwise, you're in it, you're in the fire. It could be a crisis, it could be a threat to you that it's coming, right? So when it comes to risk, you're planning and you're thinking about the future. And I think that's really important. So an example of a risk would be, is my business resilient, right? Do I have all the right people in their role? Do I have backups in case someone is sick and can't come into work for a month? Or, someone, is growing their family, they're giving birth, it's a wonderful thing. But do I have coverage for that person? And then cash flow. So in every discipline of a business, when you're talking about marketing, financial, technology, operational. In every aspects of a business, there are risks that you want to foresight.
So you just listed several of them. So what do you see most commonly in how businesses are mismanaging their risk profile?
I think that when you take risks from a compliance perspective, you're like, oh, I need to have username and password to log in. Okay, well, what's my risk of not having username and password logging in? Okay, my risk is like anyone can see my data, right? So when they're working on it from a backward perspective by saying, oh, I'm required to do this. What are my risks if I don't do it? I think that's a really common way for people to get started. And I call that risk driven by compliance and not more proactive and the other way around, right? When you look at risk from a compliance perspective, you might be looking at risk at too low of a level. And what I'm encouraging everyone to do is really engage with the people who make decisions in the company and really have a relationship and really understand, where they're coming from and what issues that they're addressing. And usually when you are talking to the right people, the risk is always on the top of their mind. They're trying to also always resolve issues. And all you need to do is really pull the real life stories out and track those as risks, and so that you can correlate them, you can be more efficient at managing them. More often than not, what I see is risks being addressed in silos is really costly of a proposition, right? Because if sales is like looking for a more pipeline and marketing is like looking at like, getting traction in terms of delivering content, usually a lot of those are related. And when you look at it more holistically and break down the department walls, you can solve a problem more efficiently.
So how do you get that buy-in for departments that are working in silos to begin to look at it from a enterprise level perspective?
Uh, I think it really starts from the top down, but also have a framework to practice from the bottom up. It's easy for a leader to say, we need to do risk management better, right? But if you don't have a framework to do it and enable your team to do it, it's a really hard place to start. Like, where do you start? You have water cooler conversations, or you build a better culture of discussing it in board meetings or in meetings, or what do? Unless something is written down, it doesn't really fully exist and it's not formalized. And so I think that like the first step to building a risk program is setting up your people, your process, and your technology to be aligned. And just because you're asking of it from your people, your process may not be there. You may not have a framework for risk management program, and then you may not have the right tools and technology to keep that workflow ongoing, keep the monitoring going, keep the accountability going. And so that's why you need to automate risk management.
So when we talk about starting at the high level with the C-suites, I'm assuming it's usually either like a CISO or a CTO that says we need to start being proactive about our security protocol. So what suggestions do you have for those C-suite members that are trying to get the other ones that are either just focused on revenue, like a CRO or a chief marketing officer? How do you make sure you can sell them on the benefit of this type of security?
Yeah, the risk management has been around for about 20 years now, a couple decades. It's increasing in importance and making it to board level conversations to have a board dashboard of risk and things like that. So I think that from a top down perspective, if you have the right leadership conversation about reporting risk in your domain of area, I think those conversations should be pretty well received, especially on the technology side. No business can really operate without technology anymore, right? Everything is dependent on technology. It's so critical to the operation of the business, and most likely, regardless of what industry you're in, you're going to be regulated or you're going to want to protect your intellectual property. And so, having the right risk register and the risk reporting from your each one of your leadership team is absolutely critical. And for technology because it is such a huge spend in an organization. I recommend that leaders of the organization really look at how they allocate their money and their costs and their spend. And wherever you have the top three most expensive costs, you really need to manage risk and enable your management team to have a good way to manage risk because it can easily get out of control. I mean, there are so many applications organizations are using. The networks are now bleeding in boundaries because we're using cloud infrastructures and the security of it in terms of the end-to-end processing. How are you going to really ensure that unless you really put in the time to architect, to design, and to understand and think about how you're controlling those risks?
And so when you think about the blurring of the infrastructure because it's up in the cloud, one of the things that every executive thinks about is how much money does that make me, right? Or what is the potential cost impact? So for those that are trying to sell it within their own organizations to change that posture, what do you recommend that they do in order to figure out a calculation on the money either saved or gained from implementing security practices?
That's a great question. I think the first step is you don't know what you're gaining or saving if you don't know what you're protecting, right? So I think the first step is I identify and really understand what you're spending money on, inventorying at the right level. You don't sometimes don't need to go down to like all the bits and pieces of like every chip, but you can get to like, okay, in this general application, I'm spending this much money, or I have X number of these resources that I'm overseeing, paying for, and managing, right? First, you need to put that down into a system, not just in an Excel spreadsheet, because there is a huge matrix of context that you need to know regarding those resources that you're paying for. And one of the contexts is, are they being used? What's the uptime? What is the capacity? And do I have people who know how to use it, right? And am I paying for stuff that are just sitting there, or am I paying for stuff that is really doing work for me? And in order to even get these basic question answer, you really need to have this super dynamic, real time like system that will allow you to slice and dice these questions so that you can have answers for them.
Well, so let's transition that into industry trends. So when you look at the cybersecurity industry, what are the major shifts that you're seeing in regards to risk and the compliance of it?
Yeah, what I'm seeing as a shift is we have for the companies that are extremely forward in adopting cloud technology really fast in the last 5 to 10 years. It's no longer a new thing. Cloud is a thing, right? It is the new data center. And some people are catching up to that, and some people are fully embracing it with zero data center. And you can kind of see that our financial services industry is also transforming in that space. In the past, there's a lot of like financial processing that are like legacy systems that are homegrown. They are very tightly protected inside the network. But now, these consolidation of like community banks and regional banks and credit unions, they are no longer able to operate on really old legacy software because they're so vulnerable to attack, right? It's so hard to keep them updated and maintained. So they're going through a huge transformation. So depending on the different industry, you have to continue to push new technology and new transformation of your infrastructure. So I think that we're pretty much in like a decent maturity stage of cloud infrastructure adoption. Where I think we're going next and where I'm really seeing, and I think that people are kind of really struggling between like inventory and understanding the resources that they're using and how to control that to understanding the data and how to control the data, right? So I think we're moving into AI, we're moving into big data, machine learning, learning models, and new type of data that is being captured with new tools and applications. So I think that we're going into this like new couple of decades of understanding how to control the data. What is the risk of data, right? And with AI nowadays, everyone's talking about misinformation. Like you say, hey, ChatGPT, what should I wear today? And it'll give you, your answer, but it may not be a good fit for you. So, misinformation and maybe data that has been tampered with by bad actors, those are all very real situation, and it could be extremely harmful when it comes to, intentional threats that are targeted at us.
And I think that's a good point because obviously AI is a hot topic to where even people that are just doing automation call it AI of some sort because it's done for you. So we hear about AI all the time, but when it comes to compliance and risk management, how is AI influencing your space and how is your company handling it?
I think that currently we have some early framework and standards around AI and how we should control AI and what the risk for AI is. NIST have some published standard for risk management framework and their AI framework. Um, ISO, the International Standard Organization, also have their early release phase one version of their AI standards that a lot of companies are getting certified for. But I think we're just barely scraping the surface in the GRC world of identifying these initial risks and controls of AI. I also see that AI is impacting our world in terms of more and more vendors are coming out with AI products or AI tools, brand new companies, startup companies that we want to use their tools for, maybe in the R&D phase and maybe planning to go to production. Those organizations, from a supply chain perspective, should also be vetted out, and contracts should be in place to be addressing the type of AI risks that could potentially be blockers or harmful for organizations. So I think right now in the GRC space, I'm seeing it from, establishing some early risks and controls to mitigate AI, like craziness and risk. And then I'm also seeing in the supply chain that there are more and more product and new companies coming on board that we have to vet out and really understand the risk.
So, where do you see the balance between artificial intelligence and human oversight landing?
I think that technology is one of those things that is so fast growing that it's almost it is impossible for any one group of people or one person or any group of people to slow down or contain. I think that with AI, we need to really understand and the technology before we put more stake into it, and allow it to mature and provide the community and the people who are responsible for building these tool sets, giving them guardrails and feedback before big money are poured into it. I think that we're still in the early phase of maturity for AI, even though, a lot of people are starting to adopt it, which is great. We're all early adopters of technology. But I think that on the enterprise side, there are a lot of really smart people who are looking at what are the appropriate kind of guardrails, right? Because we're all trying to get information faster. Information is is great, but what you do with it is really where what it matters, right? So I think that the human aspects can never be taken away. You can be presented with as many information, as much information as possible. It may make you more productive, which has a value in it, but it can never replace human judgment and what you're seeing at real time, because the computer still needs time to process everything. And so our senses are I think that human are the ones who are creating these AI models, and it's gonna continue to catch up with what we know, what we expect to get out of an output. I think there is an appropriate way to use AI in terms of helping you scale, helping you, be more productive, and even allowing you to be curious to do more research in certain things. But it's gonna continue to evolve. I think it will be smarter in a really fast pace, but that's great. We all need to up our level of baseline to play, right? So I think it's great. I love technology. I embrace it, but at the same time, I think that it's the responsibility of human to make it safe.
Okay. And so when it comes to making it safe, obviously humans in general, it's kind of like the joke of a wheel being invented. It's like the wheel was invented because humans were lazy. They wanted an easier way to do it. AI is making everything easier for everyone. So what suggestions or tips and tricks do you have for people on how to use AI safely?
I will answer that question. However, I'm not sure if it's making everything safer and easier for everyone, right? I mean, I think there are all kinds of people out there in this world. We are at a nation state warfare, on the internet, in terms of cyber attacks. So, for some people, it can make their life more difficult. By having these new technology, like, they're having to learn like a really new thing. They're having to change their job roles. They're having to work differently. So I think that it impacts lives for sure, but it may or may not always be positive. But life is tough. So I think it's the reality that we need to accept and kind of figure out what's next for us. Yeah, and so I think in terms of like using it safely, I think that, we need to use a lot of judgment like we do with everything else. I mean, we get in a car every day, and so, that has a lot of risk because, getting into an accident is not always about your control, it's about everyone else around you.
Speaking of getting into cars, have you seen the new Waymo self-driving taxis?
Yes, I have. I'm in San Francisco, so we're probably like Waymo's like phase one experiment ground.
Have you ridden one yet?
I have actually, the front page of Waymo's website is in my neighborhood, so I'm not gonna say anymore. But it's great. It's definitely a wonderful experience and just very exciting considering I remember black and white TV existed.
Yeah, that was the thing. And TV would almost turn off depending on how far back you go, right? There wasn't TV
Yeah.
from like 9 p.m. to 6 a.m.
Yeah, the
So,
antenna used to be a thing, right?
yes, now that's a long lost thing. So, going back to that productivity piece, you mentioned that artificial intelligence is a great way to make you more productive. So, do you have any tips and tricks for people that are first getting into using AI or just general practices that you use on how to increase their productivity?
Yeah, I think as an end user, prompting is a really important skill. All these AI tools are only as good as what you're asking it, and whatever you're asking, into your AI questions or what you want AI to produce for you, how you describe it, how you prompt it is extremely important. You can't just say, show me a picture of a cat. You will get a much nicer cat if you say, I want a Persian cat that's white, that has blue eyes, like just being able to learn how to prompt your AI sufficiently will give you more insight and depth to how powerful this technology is.
Okay, well, that's great. I appreciate those examples. I think that's really well done. I've recently shifted into an AI first mindset myself, and it was tough to make that switch, but the productivity is amazing as long as you're smart enough to make sure you either double check it, or when it comes to coding, it's pretty obvious when it goes wrong. So I love that. So let's focus on C1 risk again. So when you look at the company and how it's doing currently, what is working really well right now for your company and the clients?
I think that. We continue to stay really focused at what our end goal is for the customer. We are a productivity tool and we're trying to enable our customer to manage risk. Most efficiently to reduce their time spent in doing work, but do it in a quality way and consistent way. And then from a compliance perspective, we want them to be more efficient. And so I think stability and scalability is really important for our customer. And I think that where we need to go from a cybersecurity tool set perspective is to really mature as an industry and as an organization into a critical infrastructure play where, software are not, getting swapped out by new ones, the new pretty candy every, couple years, but to continue investment in toolbox and tool sets that allow you to stabilize your business and keep help you focus more time on making revenue instead of like switching out tools. Because I think there is a huge cost to changing tools and data migration, data, all that good stuff. And I think there's an appropriate time to do that when we go through a big wave of technology transformation time frame. But usually those are more like 10-year roadmaps and not like the 1 to 3 year roadmaps.
Gotcha. So can you share a example of a win that really validated this approach?
Yeah, so with GRC, it's process, automation, and with any process automation, it impacts people, and people need to adapt to change. They need to get the buy-in. They need to have trust in this new process, right? So it's never like an overnight implementation, and that's why uh, really speaking to the stability and the productivity part of this. An example would be, we have a number of examples. I would say we're really getting a lot of traction in city and state government entity. In the past, they don't have a lot of like resources or top talent where they're paying for like Google engineer salaries, right? So in order for them to actually put in a strong program, it's definitely like a multi-year approach, right? Like it's a crawl, walk, run approach to adopt a product that is budget friendly because it's all state, our taxpayer money, and also give it enough time for user adoption. Give it enough time for people to learn the product. Give it enough time for people to actually put meaningful work into the product and give it enough time for people to get the benefit out of the product, right? And I feel like sometimes those are just like annual milestones. So I think depending on what industry you're in, there's no set templates or a playbook timeline. It just really depends on the industry. And I think another example I can give is our airport infrastructure. We're in and managing risks in our airport infrastructure for some large airport construction projects. And what we're really seeing is that the Port Authority, who typically owns the airports, are no longer, operating in its silo. They're working on a public-private collaboration with organizations that can help them speed up the constructions of those airport terminals and top talent to really bring in innovation and design and the new experience to provide this world-class airport experience globally, right? So I think this public-private collaboration brings a lot of transformation in culture, in operation, and all of that, and the risks that you need to manage throughout these projects is absolutely critical. And what we're seeing is that those risks are being monitored and discussed and reviewed by like top board leaders on a monthly basis. They can't even wait quarterly or annually. They have to do it monthly, right? Because it's that important. And to have a sustainable process to update those risks every month, you have to automate. And so I think that we're seeing growth in that area, and yeah, and that's really exciting.
Well, I love that aviation example. And there was a key point that you said back there about, sometimes it's just an annual target that they're shooting for, right? It's sorry, not target, milestone. So when those sorts of things come into play, what are the metrics or key performance indicators that they're looking at these checkpoints to make sure that they're hitting their security concerns?
Yeah, so not everything can be an annual checkpoint milestones. I think there are various different risks. Like, for example, what's my risk for an earthquake here in California, right? That's certainly not something I need to address every month because it may not change that much because we're looking at a longer term, like 20-year plan and 50-year plan and stuff like that. So annually, by looking at what those seismic activities look like, may make sense. But sometimes the volume is a lot higher and the impact is really high where you don't want to wait annually, right? Like for example, these airport projects, you don't want a new airport terminal to take that long to finish because everyone's waiting to use it. It's such a detour to go to channel everything to terminal 2 instead of being able to use this new terminal, and everyone's so excited about it, but at the same time you have to make sure that it's safe, right? Like it's infrastructure, it has to be safe and it has to provide great experience. And so I think that in terms of like annual metric, it really needs to depend on your business. It's not a cookie cutter. Like if you're in healthcare versus transportation versus in financial services, right? Different risks must be handled in the appropriate care and schedule that makes sense for their business. The financial impact and the safety impact, you gotta really think about each risk that you're looking at and decide the right number, the metrics for cadence.
Do you have any example metrics that you would recommend?
We do. So our company was fortunate enough to work with the risk team with at Gartner with for cybersecurity risk profiles. Specifically in the financial services industry and the systems that are processing like the most important financial transaction in our world, and money transfer, and the risks that were built into this framework that we're using are from experts that have been deep into cybersecurity and system risk management. And so I feel very confident about the type of risk that we're introducing and that framework to our customers. And it's very comprehensive. It's kind of like a full body workout. It starts with, identity and authentication and two-factor authentication, and really understanding why you need to have those and how it mitigates your risk. And it goes all the way into your infrastructure, your network, your firewalls, how you're controlling unauthorized access remotely and inside the network, and it goes to even as far as supply chain and physical security, right? So it's a the set of risks that we have that we recommend our customer evaluate how it applies to them is definitely a full body scan workout of the entire spectrum of cybersecurity risks.
That's awesome. So on the flip side, what would you say is the most frustrating challenge that C1 Risk is experiencing currently?
I think that the challenge that I see is not necessarily like a C1 risk challenge, but I think from an industry perspective, we need to, in GRC, normalize our reporting structure for GRC. And what I mean by that is, um, I would say like 30 years ago or more, the finance, discipline had gone through a lot of transformation from doing your balance sheet and P&L in Excel spreadsheets into systems like ERP system like SAP or NetSuite, things like that, right? And when they went through that transformation, it was a huge change, and there were a lot of cleanup effort, and there's also a lot of normalization effort to make sure, like, the balance sheet, the P&L, and the key basic reports that everyone needs are consistent across all platforms and how people work for gap accounting rules, right? I think that in the whole cybersecurity and in GRC world, for risk management and for compliance, I would love to see some type of transformation into consistency of the kind of reports that we all expect, and that way we can streamline this process with auditors. Our market size is really big, over 80 billion revenue industry annually, and this industry have a lot of really smart people and a lot of qualified firm doing their attestation. But at the same time, if you really look at their templates and their spreadsheets and their report that they need to do audits, there's so many slight variations, and they're all right. But I think that the more we can consolidate and keep pushing that envelope to have standards of reporting, we're not fully there yet. I think we all need to push for that and be open-minded to coming together the right type of report that we can standardize to help every organization be more streamlined and operate more efficiently.
So when you talk about that, it's people, it's process, and it's technology. So where do you feel that that challenge lies out of those three? Like what is the main one that's holding back that from occurring?
Oh, well, I think that the most complicated thing in this world is people, right? So I think that me being a technologist, I think technology is easy. You tell it what you want it to do, but it's the people that help shape the culture and help shape the process. And we have to bring in people to contribute to this ecosystem because of the experience and the foresight of where things are going. And so I think that the challenge is right now we have way too many framework. We have a lot of organizations that are publishing really meaningful things, but maybe they're not coming together to like make things more streamlined.
Okay. So now let's look into the future. Where do you want to see C1 Risk and your clients in the next 6 to 12 months? What is the vision and goals of the company?
The vision and goal for all of my customer is, if you're still doing something outside of a tool when it comes to risk management and compliance, please do it in the tool, because you're not only automating your process or having more security and control over that set of data, but you're positioning yourself for higher level of intelligence, because technology is changing really fast. AI is going to be here to stay, and it's only going to improve. And you need all that data that is being unmanaged in so many different ways into something that you can optimize. And so, like I said earlier, we're moving into a couple of eras of data management, data security. It's all about the data. So keep your data, understand how to structure your data so that you can optimize your data.
Okay. And that kind of leads into the next question, but what does success look like when they get there? So they're using, they're using the tool, everything's in one source. So what does that dream vision look like when everybody is doing what they're supposed to be doing?
I think the dream vision for an operator is like, oh my gosh, I'm doing so much more. with less time, or my quality has improved like tremendously, like 10x, 100x. And now I'm able to have like the right time to do more meaningful projects. And then I think for leaders, it's really pushing for you know, how do I hire like really good quality team? How do I grow at a reasonable rate in my operating costs? And how do I leverage these technology to help my team work smarter, right? And so I think that there's so much benefit for everyone in the organization.
So if you had a magic wand, right, all companies struggle through different scenarios, just like you've been explaining about, if you could wave the wand to fix the one thing that holds these companies back, or even your own company in the cybersecurity industry, what is that one fix that would prevent them from being slowed down?
I think that whenever organization or the market is facing challenge, I always think it's the time to double down and take more risks, right? Like buy low, sell high, right? And so when it comes to taking more risks with people, it's training. I think that we don't talk about it enough, and I don't think that we're looking at it holistic enough to make that training meaningful. And I think that there is a lack of training in leadership team. I think leadership team are the ones who are lacking training the most because they might, at some point when you get so senior in your career, the best training is talking to your other peers in other organization. But I think providing more platform for that, and also and enabling leaders to understand how to deal with crisis, how to plan for crisis, how to be more resilient as an organization as a topic is, I think, kind of skinny, and I like to see more development in that space. And I really think that R&D is another one, right? Like if you don't spend money in R&D, learning, experimenting, you could die, right? Innovation is what keeps us. There's a book that I really love that remembers me, that I remember forever, is How Google Works, right? And in that book, the founder of Google, like Sergey and Larry, are saying how technology is taking over every industry, every business, right? Like we used to have like a lot of mom and pop bookstores, and then they were replaced by Barnes and Nobles, and then they were replaced by Amazon, right? And so if you don't adopt technology, you'll die. And so I think that by making sure that it doesn't matter what size of an organization it is, it's really important for us to continue to keep learning and continue to keep growing, is really important.
So you mentioned two things, right? One is the R&D, but then the other one is also the lack of training, not only within an organization, but even at the higher levels. So why do you think that's such a consistent issue across all the companies and organizations?
I think that we are kind of have been in this decade of period where uh, people have been experiencing a lot of adversities, like COVID was a huge adversity to the entire world and to people and organization. And I think that the adversity makes things really difficult, and interject a lot of change into companies and organizations. So I feel like we're kind of reacting, and maybe there's a level of fear in this whole process of change. And now I think we're definitely, every city is back, and we're moving beyond. We're trying to get back to normal before COVID, and I feel like the market uncertainty with the tariffs and, the inflation rates that we're, experiencing right now, and the fluctuations of interest rate where it's going. I feel like market condition also has a big role in terms of like how everyone's making decisions and being impacted. And I think because they have not been in great shape, that everyone is kind of, staying in their lane, right? Don't ruffle the feather. Don't just keep things moving, and we're happy. But unfortunately, from a risk management perspective, I really want to like just reignite that passion, that desire, and that excitement of what it should be. When things are bad, that's when you double down and you innovate and you learn and you take more risks. And I think that history have shown over and over again that we will come up on top if we do that.
Sounds great, Lily. I really appreciate all these insights you've been providing. Do you have any final words for our listeners and people that are thinking about cybersecurity?
Yeah. I haven't talked a lot about specifically like technology risk, but risk management is not just to check the box for compliance, but it's really it's a way of thinking. It's a way of helping you make decisions, and it's also cultural. And so it's a very exciting field. I encourage everyone to learn more about it, get into it, or reach out to us so that we can, just nerd out about risk management.
That's fantastic, Lily. I really appreciate it. And thank you for sharing all these different perspectives on risk management and the bigger vision of what C1 Risk is striving for. For our listeners, thank you as always for tuning in. If you want to learn more about C1 Risk, make sure to go check out Lily and her team at their website at c1risk.com. And that really wraps up today's session. So until next time, remember to stay curious, stay innovative, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible. I hope you all have a great day. Hey there, it's Darren from The Digital Shift. I wanted to take a moment to thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. If you haven't already, make sure to check out the links in the description to learn even more information of everything we went over today. But if you enjoyed this podcast, then you are absolutely going to love this one. And if you're looking to look deeper into the technology that we go over in these videos, then go ahead and check out this one here. Regardless of which one you pick, you're going to walk away with something new. As always, I'll talk to you in the next one and keep being awesome.